Hey, thanks for joining me. This is just another Sunday chat, and I'm going to give an update about some of the things that are going on with my Afghan friends in Pakistan at the end. But I wanted to, as I was thinking this week about, just some of the things that have been going on, kind of the topic of this whole saga of the week has really been about our ideas about individualism, especially here in the US, and our own stuff. And what I mean by that is, and it's actually tied into the Bible study that I just did at church, but um, a lot of times we get really focused on our own stuff and we think that it's the right stuff and what we're actually supposed to be doing. And just as an example of this, a few weeks ago, I ran into this lady at my church, and she was just talking about Mexico and certain things. And at that time, I had one of our members in Pakistan had a cousin that had gone to Brazil and then went up, through South America, and had just crossed into Mexico and was contacting me to get help. So first of all, I've told them multiple times I know nothing about immigration. And so they're contacting me and they want help. And I said, well, I am not an expert on immigration, but they're thinking that they can just go to California and they'll be put in jail for a couple of days and be released into the US. And I said, I really don't know much about immigration, but I'm pretty positive that's not the way it works. And you need to talk to an attorney before you present yourself at the border for asylum. Because another thing that a lot of us seem to have forgotten in the US is that international law that most civilized countries subscribe to, you are required to provide asylum to people in need. So anybody who actually is in need should have the right to claim asylum and have their case heard. Pakistan is a third world country. They do not abide by international law. That's part of the reason that we have such a problem with our Afghan Christians in Pakistan, because they're under constant threat of being deported because most of them, they don't have valid visas. They've all expired. But we in the United States are supposed to be a major power, first world country. And we seem to have forgotten that is, a human right to be able to present yourself for protection if you're in need. And there had just been a case right before he sent me a message. This cousin sent me a message about another Afghan asylum seeker who had presented himself at the border. The border agents, he went to Texas, and the border agents refused to allow him to petition for asylum, took his stuff and arrested him. And he's still, as far as I know, he's still sitting in jail. So I told him you need to talk to an attorney first. And I was trying to find different resources for him down in Mexico. And, I'm not familiar with the area. I don't know what's going on down there, but I was just Googling and trying to find different resources for him, because I was sure that there must be organizations in place, because it's not like he's the only one that is seeking asylum there. That's the main topic of conversation in the United States. And so, and the other thing too is, like, he doesn't have like actual cell coverage. I mean, so he has to connect to the internet with, on Wi-Fi somewhere. And so you can't just give him a phone number to call either. It has to be an organization that has WhatsApp so that they can contact them. So anyway, so this is what I was looking for at the time. So I run into this person at my church. We're just talking. I'm like, oh, wow. This is like an awesome opportunity. This is what she had said was her family was originally from Mexico, and they were dual citizens, and they had an organization or nonprofit in Mexico that was, helping, teaching kids and like training up leaders and everything. And her dad's been a missionary there for 30 years. And I was like, great, awesome. I said, can I talk to your dad? Because, I was thinking, keep in mind, I wasn't asking them to help to help this person. I was just wanted to talk to him to see, because I was sure that he must know, if they've been doing missions work in Mexico for 30 years, they must know what organizations are there in place. And she wouldn't give me her dad's contact information. And she's like, well, that's not really what we do. She's like, we just, we train and educate and we build leaders and they're not allowed to, it's actually illegal to help immigrants coming through. She's like, well, they will, but they're not supposed to. And I'm just looking at her. She's saying this. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I mean, you won't even let me talk to your dad to, like, again, I wasn't asking them to actually help. I was just asking if I could talk to him about, what organizations were there. And she wouldn't. And so anyway, she's like, as she left, she was like, well, I pray for him. I'm thinking, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for those prayers. Yeah. Please pray for him that he will encounter somebody that will actually help him rather than just like talk about, oh, well, it's not my thing. So, she wouldn't even give me any contacts for organizations who are there where it is their thing. And I think that's just kind of an example about like what a lot of people do, is that we get an idea of what our stuff is, what our thing is. And if something is in front of us that isn't our stuff or our niche, then we think that we're good, that we don't have to, because that's not our thing. That's not our thing. And this actually was, we talked about this in the Bible study this morning. And that's really what the parable of the Good Samaritan is about, right? So there was this Jew who was hurt and needed help. And his fellow Jews, the priests and Levites, passed him by. And they were people who actually, it was their job. It was their gig to help people in need. And they wouldn't. They weren't at the temple. So they're not going to stop and help somebody on the side of the road. The Samaritan, who the Jews thought were scum, he was on a business trip. And he sees him and he stops and he takes care of him and funds his needs, right? Funds his care. And he tells the innkeeper, I'm going to, take care of him, charge what he needs to my account. And when I come back, if what I've provided isn't enough, then I'll pay it, right? That's the story of the Good Samaritan. It's not like, oh, well, sorry, but that's not my little, subset of people that I've decided are my thing. The need presented itself and somebody was in need, and so they helped. And I think that, I know that there's a lot more scribes and, Levites and priests that are in the story of the Good Samaritan, that's good parable of the Good Samaritan, than there are actually Good Samaritans. Because it's easy when we think that this is our thing and this is what we do, that we're covered, right? That we're already doing the thing that we're supposed to be doing and we don't have to worry about anything else. And if we're doing it because that's our thing, are we really even doing God's thing at all? Because this is the other thing that has just been a little shocking to me as I've been hearing the stories of, these Afghan Christians. I mean, we know that the U.S. government bailed, right? And we are not, as a country, we are not following through on our promise. When we promise to help our allies, we're not doing that. The applications are backed up. SIV applications, humanitarian parole applications, all those are backed up. And, there is that welcome corps that's coming out, but, that's like, hopefully that will be a better solution. And we just pulled out, and then we leave a mess, and then we just think we're done. This is the attitude. Actually, there was somebody on Twitter that was talking about the State of the Union, and somebody had made a comment, like criticizing a conservative commentator about bringing up Afghanistan. And I'm thinking, you know what? I mean, he may be hypocritical, but the truth is the truth. We bailed, we ran, we left a mess. And we're acting like we have it all taken care of. And this one person said, oh, well, what would you do? Want us to like just leave a mess like everyone else? I'm thinking, you think it's cleaned up? I mean, do you even know what's going on? How horrific it is? I mean, it's horrible. Yesterday I just got a message from, again, one of our classmen Bible study members, and his brother-in-law who's still in Afghanistan. It was pictures of him beaten, like his head, just like blood all over it, like huge, like blood, just bruises all over the back of his head. And it was his brother-in-law, and he had been going to a prayer meeting. And he said it was a Warner church. It was a Warner church. And so I really didn't know quite what he was talking about at first until I had a call with him this morning, and he was explaining more about what was going on. But what did he mean by Warner Church? Is there was this man named Warner Grunwald, and he was a humanitarian worker that worked for, I actually just looked this up today, humanitarian worker that worked for Partnership in Academics and Development, but he was a Christian. And so, you know, he just was one of those people who had a very infectious faith, you know, and he wasn't a missionary in that, you know, that wasn't the purpose of the organization, but, you know, he was somebody who lived his faith. And there were a lot of people that became believers because of him. And that's what they mean by a Warner church. It's started by people who became a Christian because of Warner Grunwald. And so anyway, they were going to this church, this prayer meeting, and there was a checkpoint, and they were stopped by, so they had to, you know, they were stopped and searched by Taliban, and they looked on his phone. He had a Bible app on his phone. And so they beat him, and they said the positive about it, the good thing about it was that while they were beating him, they broke his phone. And so they weren't able to find the pictures on there, because there were a bunch of pictures of, you know, people in the fellowship, and there were like 20 families in this church. So if it hadn't broken his phone, they would have been able to identify all these Christians. And so anyway, they actually thought he was, the Taliban, they beat him so bad that they thought he was dead. And so they left him, and his family came to come and get him. And, you know, they took care of him, but he's recovered enough. He had to escape to another area. And as I was talking to them, you know, I'm talking to them, and a lot of them have worked with other organizations. Like this other person was, he had worked with this Partnership in Academics and Development. That was one of the NGOs he worked with. He also worked with Morningstar Development. And there's another family who the husband is a nurse, and he worked in the Kabul in the government hospital there in the urgent care department. His wife is a midwife and worked for the World Health Organization. And there are people who have, like, and somebody else I talked to used to work with NATO, and you would think that people that had worked in, like, with those sorts of agencies and you know, organizations, and having those kind of contacts, you would think that they would have some help, and that people that they worked with in these organizations would be helping them get out. They're not. I mean, it's just basically, they just said, sorry, see ya, we can't help you. And that's part of, I think, the trauma of it is the betrayal. It's like, it's not just that we pulled out. It's like that everybody thinks they're done. They're just turning and walking away, saying we can't. So here's the thing about can't. Can't is, you can't be in two places at once. Can't is, you know, you can't have something that's freezing cold and on fire at the same time. There are things that are physically impossible. In terms of this, can't is not a word. It's not physically impossible. It's not impossible to find them options for immigration. It's not impossible to change the processes and procedures. It's not impossible to light a fire under some of these agencies and businesses that can't even be bothered to get them a recommendation letter. Like one of our families is still waiting after a year and a half for a confirmation letter that they worked on a project from this company, IDS International, still hasn't gotten it. So their application hasn't even gotten to COM approval yet. I mean, those things aren't impossible. Those are possible things. It's not that they can't, it's that they won't. They're not going to, because it takes too much work, or it's too inconvenient, or it's messy, or it's frustrating or overwhelming. Yeah, it's all those things, but it's still possible. It's like, you won't. So people just need to be clear about that. Don't say you can't do something when you actually can. Recognize, at least be honest to yourself that you won't do it. And again, I realize that there are people that need something all over the world. There's people that are in need in the United States. There are people who are in need in our own neighborhoods. I understand that. It's just, I think there's a lot of complacency about, it's not my stuff. It's not my problem. Like, we all have our stuff that we think is our own stuff that we're doing, when really, is it really what God's asking us to do? If he puts somebody right in front of you and you have the ability to help, then maybe you should be, I think the assumption should be that you probably, since you're there and you're right in front of them, then you're probably up. It's probably up to you to help them, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody whose profession it is. And so if the default should be, we help, and yeah, you do pray about it, because we can get involved in things that I've had situations this week. I realized that just because an opportunity presents itself doesn't necessarily mean that that's something that I should be getting involved in. We do need to pray about everything that we get into, but be aware that if there's a need that you can fill and it's there, then the odds are likely that you're probably the one that needs to fill it. So I personally, this isn't my gig. I don't know anything about immigration. I told them this to begin with. I said, I know nothing about immigration. At the time, I didn't think I had any contacts, but then as I've just been walking through and asking people questions and, trying to find things out, I realized I actually had a lot more contacts than I thought I did. Resources have been coming in weird ways. I mean, just crazy ways. I mean, some of them have been out of the blue, needle in a haystack sort of contacts, but others are people I know that are giving me contacts, like one of my sources for evacuating people from Afghanistan, somebody that I helped worked with and volunteered with on an event, a few years ago. So you don't know like who your contacts are going to be and where those resources are going to come from. But I said I'll ask questions. I know a lot more about immigration now than I did 3 months ago. I know a lot more about a lot of things than I did three months ago. But if you just think you can't, and that's the end of the answer, well, maybe you can't yet, but maybe you could learn how to do it. So I don't know. I just I don't know. The other thing that's interesting to me is that things that people that you think would help don't, and people that you think that would have some empathy and compassion for people in need because they personally have been needed help in other ways, you think that they would help, doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Doesn't necessarily. It really doesn't. Just because somebody has been in those similar situations doesn't necessarily mean that they will have empathy for someone else in a similar situation. I've noticed that with people who are immigrants themselves. They don't always necessarily have empathy for people that are also trying to immigrate. Like, and I think what it is that deep down we have this idea that we deserved it, right? So we may have had help up and a handout, but we think we're owed it and that we deserve it. And so if we don't recognize that we're in the place where we're at because other people have helped us, then, and we think it's just because of us and we deserved it, then I guess it makes sense that people wouldn't necessarily have compassion or empathy towards other people in similar situations, or in, situations where they need somebody to help them out of it. Because, like, for the Afghans that are at risk, and I'm not just talking about Christians, I mean, they're at risk, but anybody who has been working with these NGOs or the NATO allies, I think I mentioned this last week. They're literally targeted. They're on a risk. They're at risk. This person I just got the pictures of him beaten. I mean, he can't go back home again. He can't go back. He had to leave his life behind because the Taliban have his number. And again, I think I mentioned this last week, we left our biometric scanning devices. We left data on all these people that worked with us, so they know their names and they can track them down. This is what we've done. And if they don't have help from the outside, I mean, I'm sure that there are some people that maybe are able to manage the maids, but for the most part, they need somebody to help them. They need somebody to help them, get out and get established. I mean, they're not being unreasonable of like wanting to, have a place where they can live and not have their door broken in and, being questioned by police or taken off and, deported just because they're like trying to get, some aid. I mean, one of our church member, one of the church members, Afghan church members, his son has leukemia, and I got a message from him on Friday that he can't, his son couldn't hear, and he wasn't here. He took them to the doctor and they said they can't treat him because he's undergoing chemotherapy. And it's just such a bad situation. And everything, it's like nobody seems to have any sort of sense of urgency about getting them out. I mean, our immigration system is such a mess, and it has been for a long time, and it has been for a lot of people. But you would think that if you sit there and you make a promise, it's like, we're going to, we will stand by you, that you follow through on it. That's what I think. And I don't know. It's just upsetting. It's just upsetting to me. And I'm going, it's the other thing is it's really hard to listen to these stories and see the pictures, and they're sitting there and they're in these, a lot of them are just like renting rooms, and they're charged more because they're so anybody turns them in, they'll be arrested and deported and blacklisted from coming back into Pakistan. And so they're at the mercy of pretty much everybody that they come in contact with. And so they're in these small rooms, and that's a lot of them are there like they've been in this really cold weather, and I've been teaching the classes, I can see them shivering, and they don't have blankets and all these things, and it's like all these people in need. And then I'm just coming into church today, and it's Super Bowl Sunday, and that's what the focus is, and they have all this stuff, and I'm thinking, all this money and focus on football. I mean, I'm sorry. I just feel like, I don't know. It's just hard. it's hard it's hard hearing the stories and then walking through this. And I don't know. Anyway, those are my thoughts for today, but I'm sorry. I'm on my iPad. There is some good things. So, this is the update. So I think last week, I can't remember, but I think last week I shared that some of my this little girl that I've been working with, I can't say I'm teaching them English. We read, we practice English, because again, they've been out of school for almost 2 years now. They can't go to school in Pakistan, and so I've just been like meeting with them 2 times a week. And last week she had asked me, she had some items that she wanted to sell, because she had this idea for selling these things to help her family make money. And I originally, when I saw the message, I thought it was from her mom, but it was from the 12-year-old. So if anybody is in Vancouver and has a Girl Scout troop, then send me a message, because you can be on her aunt's welcome core group, this little sponsor group. So we're trying to put together sponsor circles or sponsor groups for our families. And her aunt is already in Vancouver. She's a citizen, and she is working on putting together those sponsor groups. And but she has 2 siblings, so she's gonna have to have enough people in her sponsor circles to be able to get both of her siblings over. And so this little girl is 12-year-old. This is one of her aunts. So if you're in Vancouver and you have a Girl Scout troop, you really want her in your Girl Scout troop, because I tell you what, you get her there, you guys, like cookie sales, you guys will probably be the top sellers. I mean, she is a ringleader. She gets after it. So anyway, send me a message. But anyway, I was like, oh wow, that's a great idea. And I have been asking people, like I was asking Mark and this other guy, Don, and the Canadian pastor that's been helping us, and other people that I thought might know, and nobody knew. So anyway, I actually prepared for this time, but there's a new channel called the Afghanistan Project podcast, and they have weekly episodes, and they talk about the situation in Afghanistan and some of the challenges in helping people get out. And this last week they had the founder of this app called ASEAL, and I had heard about it before, but I didn't I was kind of wondering actually if it was legit, because I read a story about it, but I hadn't seen a lot of news about it. So anyway, they had the founder of this ASEAL on the podcast last week, and he was just talking about what it was that they do. So it's basically kind of like an Etsy for Afghans. So women have been pretty much banned from being in public, and so the women that used to sell in marketplaces and things, they can't do that anymore. And so they have these shops that you can open online, and you can order from these artisans in Afghanistan, and they will you can get it shipped over to you. And the flip side of it is, so there's buy good and do good, and on the flip side is you can also donate. So you can buy packages like food for a month for a family of 8, and you can buy it and they will go and deliver it to that family. So it can either be a family that you know specifically, or it can also be, you can just say, donate wherever there's a need. You also, if you don't I can't afford to buy an entire package, you can just say, you can donate a little bit and they'll pool it with other people's money. And so they have food, they have a package that is, you can buy fuel for 3 months for a family. And if you don't know, it's it's one of the worst winters in a long time. I mean, people have died of cold. I mean, there's tens of thousands, livestock that have died. And so they have that. They also have a emergency shelter package, which is a tent and, things like that. So they have different packages that you can you can buy and send to people. And then, so anyway, so I was like, oh, wow, cool. So it actually isn't a legit app. So I followed them on Twitter, and somebody from the app sent me a message. So they must just be doing that if you follow them. And they were just asking, if it could help support, people there in Afghanistan, and, also promote the app. And so I sent a message back and I said, well, you mentioned in your podcast that the people that you were planning on expanding to other countries. And they said, yes, they were actually starting in Turkey. So if you want to help people in Turkey, you can also help them through that SEAL app. But I said, I have Afghan friends that are in Pakistan. Would they be able to do that? And they said, yes. So I sent this information to our people, and I asked them if, if they wanted to set it up, then, help them promote their stores. But anyway, so that was a cool thing. So the whole thing about sending people, getting things shipped, we actually have an option for that. So that was really cool. So that just happened this last week. And so in the morning, this happened on Wednesday morning. And so I went in and to the Nest here in Kingwood. And I think I've mentioned it before. And because I've been telling them like the story about what's going on. And they said, as I was sharing the story, there was this other lady that was there. And so I'm kind of telling her the backstory. And I said, yeah, I've just telling her why I was looking for it. Because this little girl that I've been trying to, helping with English, that she had wanted to sell some things. And I said, I'm also looking for, other people that will teach them and spend some time with them. And she said, oh, well, my daughter works at the local Montessori school. And she gave me the name of the director of that school. And so I talked to her a little bit this last week. So I'm really hoping that those two things, the getting them the option to be able to sell things and have a little bit of income, and also getting more people to be able to help them and work with them. And I'm hoping those two things will be coming to a resolution. So anyway, so that's a good thing. It's just so much stuff that happens in a week. It's hard for me to remember it all. I guess I'm just trying to find a good way to keep all the information together. Like, need to track, who has applications out where. And I'm starting to get, I asked them if they could like tell me what it is that they would like to do, like when they immigrate somewhere, and that can kind of help me, find out who is the best to plug them in with. So I'm working on that too. But if you want to be praying for this, I really need a contact with the UN, because honestly, I can't remember how much I've explained, but I spent pretty much all of December just trying to get them set up with visas just to stay in Pakistan, because it's really dangerous for them even to be out. There's checkpoints all over in Pakistan. And if they don't have valid visas, they can be arrested and imprisoned for up to 3 years, fined $400. And then after they serve their prison term, they'll be deported and they'll be blacklisted from coming back to Pakistan. So it's basically, Pakistan is the main place where people are coming to. Like, if you follow any of the evacuation groups, most of the time they take them out to Pakistan and then hopefully move them out to other places. And so if they can't come to Pakistan, this is an avenue, shut for them to be able to immigrate somewhere else. And they are not, a lot of them had applied for renewals of their visas that they had, but Pakistan isn't processing them unless if you pay expediting fees. I mean, it's just so extortionate. It's just crazy. And so it took a while to even figure out, like, how do we even help them? So that's the first thing. How do we get money there? And then even finding anybody who would help guarantee that they would process those visas. Because one of the people came on a student visa. He's a dentist, and he had tried to get a new visa or renewed or something a few months ago, He paid $200. The guy didn't do it. And so that money was lost. And the deal was with Pakistan, they had a deadline of December 31st that if they exited by that time, that they would waive the fees. Because it's the other thing. If they go in to renew the visa and they have an expired visa, they have to pay this daily fine for overstaying the visa. And so like the dentist who had been overstaying his visa, it would have been like $2,000. It's just crazy amount. So anyway, so they had to file exit permits, which they also have to pay for. So they have to pay to have a visa to stay, and they have to even pay to leave the country with an exit permit. That had to be filed by December 31st. They had to leave within 15 days of those exit permits being filed, and they have to wait. We still have people waiting in Afghanistan for those visas to be processed to come back. So that was this huge thing, huge expense, huge headache. But if they had their UNHCR refugee designation, we wouldn't have to do that. We wouldn't have had to do this. They would have been fine where they're at. So everybody has applications in, but they're not being processed. So I need a contact that can help me help get that expedited. And the other thing is we have two families that already have those refugee designations because they were there before the 2021, and they've just been sitting there because the resettlement office in Pakistan is not resettling people, and they have been told they can't even be asked to resettle, and they have to have a referral. Somebody from outside the country has to ask for them to be relocated. So those two families both have family in Australia, and they need a referral to be able to get into that. So we need visas. Well, not visas. What I really want is their refugee certification, so we don't have to worry about visas for everybody. And also, we need to get those two families into the process. So that's what I need. It's UN contact. And also, we just need funding for everything. And we have Mark's friend, Don, has a ministry, and he has orphanages and everything all over the world. And he's been friends with Mark for a long time. And so he's been very helpful in, he's basically sending out a lot of the money that Mark has donated. But I've talked to him, and he said that he would receive donations through his ministry, and that then he would send it to where it's needed. So, anyway, so that's a good thing, because that was another thing. Like, if people want to donate, like, how do we do that? So, if you want to help my particular group of people, you can donate at DawnShireMinistries.org, and just in the notes, put Raised to Walk, and then we're going to start. We have passports that we need to get for people. If we have to get visas, that's going to be a whole another big expense. Also, the other thing too is that one of the things that we did in December is we got birth certificates for the babies. But looking at some of the people's documents, like one person, his last name, he has a very common last name in Afghanistan, but it's a last name that has, I think, like 3 or 4 different spellings. And his children's last name on their passports is spelled differently than his last name. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, I'm pretty positive that might cause a problem with immigration because the last names aren't spelled the same. And I said, I think you probably need to have birth certificates so you can verify that you are the father of these children. So we need to get that. But then as we were talking, I'm just thinking that we should probably just make sure everybody has a copy of their birth certificate, and we can get that at the Afghanistan embassy in Islamabad for $20. So, I mean, it's only $20, but we have a lot of people, so we need to work on that too. And we have people that we need to get evacuated out of Afghanistan, so we have a lot of stuff that we're doing. But anyway, that's an update. So there's good things, and I just need to remember that God's going to bring the people that are going to help, and the right resources, and to not get if people don't want to help, just to let it go. just to let it go. The right people will come. So anyway, but I want to share about that that man Warner that they had mentioned. Is one of the people in one of the church groups that I'm connected with actually worked with him. And so this is a story of him. He was actually from South Africa, and he worked for that humanitarian organization. And he was actually murdered by the Taliban in 2014. They attacked the office, the NGO office, and it killed him and two of his children, as well as a number of other people there. And the attack came because they said they thought it was some secret missionary group. And, the NGO wasn't a Christian organization. But he was a Christian. And I think that should be a reminder to us. We shouldn't be secret Christians. That's kind of the whole point. It's like when Jesus said, "You are my witnesses." It's not about us telling, but about us being the product demonstration of what the Holy Spirit does within us. When, so it shouldn't be a secret, right? And he wasn't a secret. And like I said, they had all of these people who came to faith because of him, because of the witness of his life. So much so that there are Warner churches. But reading that article, there was a quote on there that I thought was really great. This was a quote that he had posted on his LinkedIn profile before he died. And he said, "I am a change agent. Wherever I can, I try to influence positive change. I find great peace in the knowledge that I have contributed to someone else's advancement in life." That was his philosophy. He was only 46 when he died, but he made a big impact. I think that's something that we should all be thinking about, right? So how are we going to be remembered? And also, like when we see Jesus face to face and we say, "This is what I did. This is what you gave me. This is what I did with it." What are we going to have to show for ourselves? And again, I'm not talking about, earning salvation or anything, but I think, if Jesus gave his life for us, we should be able to appreciate it. And there should be fruit from it beyond just our own little circle, right? Beyond our four walls, beyond our little comfort group. We should have a little bit of influence beyond that. So anyway, those are my thoughts for Sunday afternoon. I have to go. I have a couple of errands. I have to be back here at 4. So anyway, hope you guys have a great week. See what happens in the next 7 days, because it seems like there's always a lot. So anyway, talk to you later.